I never gave up on you. Never. Never. We are so back. We are so back. Famous last words. But look, come on. We went through a trilogy of videos. For those of you there with me, thank you. We were mourning together. The first of those 3 videos where we had learned that the KOTOR remake may have been iced and that Saber Interactive may no longer be working on it, and we were watching as the months poured on after all these reports as Embracer has shedded off everything except the KOTOR remake. So it's hanging on by a thread, but that's not really giving me the most confidence that this is a project steamrolling toward a successful launch. Then afterwards, we made a video talking about how I think Xbox would be the perfect publishing partner, since one report that I believe originally came from Jeff Grubb was that PlayStation wanted out of KOTOR remake, and Lucasfilms just sort of finds the developer and finds a publisher and marries them together. And so I proposed in that video, Xbox, you kind of had this as an exclusive. You are the one who could save KOTOR remake, and it would fit really well for your ecosystem. I thought that was it. And then we got a third final key update saying that, according to 2 sources from Saber Interactive, the KOTOR remake was still in development. Since then, not much has really been said. People have tracked like earnings reports from Embracer suggesting that KOTOR remake is still alive and well, but I just couldn't really buy in, because knowing where Embracer is heading, they lost out on a $2 billion deal and have been axing positions and companies and games everywhere. And while it made a lot of sense to hold on to Star Wars because that can generate you a lot of revenue if done right, it's a licensed product, you got to pay for that. Why do you want to hang on to this? Could you have put your team on something else? Saber Interactive employs, as we'll talk about in a moment here, over 3,000 people. Could they be working on some other things instead? How do they continue to justify hanging on to this? You know, we saw how The Last Ronin, a TMNT game that I'm extremely excited for. If you haven't read that comic, please check it out. But the team handling that had half their staff laid off. So I didn't think that KOTOR remake would get out unscathed, but if this new report is to be believed, it may be, you know, I don't want to go all hype mode, of course, but this is the best case scenario for where it was at, and hopefully the future is bright. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Unicorn Overlord. It's a Vanillaware game, y'all, so listen up. That art style is super cozy, always inviting you in. I was introduced to their games with Dragon's Crown. I remember playing it before I was going into college. Wonderful time there. Then I went to Muramasa Rebirth on my Vita. So naturally, I'm very, very excited for Unicorn Overlord. And this is a rebirth of the retro fantasy strategy genre that embarks audiences on a nostalgic-infused epic SRPG adventure, inviting them to forge alliances, liberate kingdoms, and explore an expansive world with stunning visuals. Now, unlike the last game from Vanillaware, 13 Sentinels, the focus of this game lies in strategy and tactics rather than emphasizing the narrative. So it's a classic heroic fantasy tale that's going to pay homage to the 1632-bit strategy RPG gameplay with that gorgeous art style that you know and love from Vanillaware. It's available on Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and PS4 digital only, and there's a demo out right now that you can play at this moment in time. It's a long demo, by the way, like 5 hours, and the progress carries over into the full release. You can hear the music in the background too. It's got a beautiful score. I cannot wait to play, and if you're excited too, Unicorn Overlord comes out March 8th this year, not too far away. Thanks again to Unicorn Overlord for sponsoring today's video. So, Bloomberg reports Embracer Group to sell Saber developer of a new Star Wars game remake in a $500 million deal. Swedish gaming company Embracer Group AB will sell one of its largest subsidiaries, Saber Interactive, to a group of private investors in a deal worth up to $500 million, according to a person familiar with the transaction. Saber will become privately owned with around 3,500 employees, said the person who asked not to be identified, discussing non-public information. The company plans to continue developing a remake of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the highly anticipated game that was removed from its previous developer, Aspire Media, in 2022. The deal will be one of Embracer's largest moves yet in an ongoing cost-cutting initiative that has seen the company lay off employees and shutter studios around the world over the past year. Since this report, Saber and Embracer have declined to comment. Saber, the developer of the games such as SnowRunner and World War Z, operates studios in several countries, including the US, Portugal, and Russia. In addition to making its own original titles, it does work for other developers. The $500 million figure includes an option for Saber to bring along multiple Embracer subsidiaries, the person says. Okay, let's start off by taking an honest assessment of the situation here and why I've personally come to a more optimistic point of view here. The worst case scenario was this project remaining under Embracer, just because even if they thought they saw a ton of money in it, right now with that $2 billion deal that fell through the floor for Embracer, forcing them to shut down these studios, this puts them in a spot where even if KOTOR Remake makes a lot of sense for them, they just may not have the money right now to fund it and would have to shut it down anyway. That's the ugly part of the business, unfortunately. There was also talks of the reason that KOTOR Remake got shifted around from Aspire to Saber Interactive was scope issues. And now if the scope doesn't really match the budget that Embracer can provide, then it's also possible that a business reality kicks in and Embracer shuts down the project. Getting this game away from Embracer was best case scenario number one. Now, I didn't think that originally when this all first was announced, right, when it was Aspire, because I thought they were the ideal developers. But seeing how things have progressed, yes, getting this project away from Embracer is step one. That is a very good step here. Going privately owned is also great. You're away from shareholders and the grow, grow, grow at all cost mentality, and so they can make their own decisions here to a degree and not have to appease shareholders, which I think is also a pretty gigantic win. I think the sad reality is when you see 3,500 employees, privately owned company, I think this company is going to see a lot of layoffs as the investment is completed. If what we've seen across the industry is anything to go by, you know, there's going to be optimizations, unfortunately, to the company that I think is going to reduce that size considerably. At least that's my way of seeing things here. But Saber Interactive keeping the IP is also great. So where does this leave things effectively? Last we heard, PlayStation wanted out. Now we have Embracer selling off the developer, so they have no horse in this race. So now it's just Saber developing this, and as Lucasfilms, they need to go find a publisher. This goes back to me to square one of what I was saying when all this was breaking, is that Xbox, this is like a legacy moment, I feel. Like, you had this game exclusively. It was kind of weird, but I didn't really care because I'm just happy the game existed in the first place. It was kind of weird that with exclusivity in mind, and I know Xbox seems to be stepping away from that, but that, you know, KOTOR wasn't going to be on your platform at all when it was getting remade. Very strange. Now, this can still go multi-plat, but Xbox can at least fund this thing because that makes the most sense. That's the most likely partner in my eyes because it fits the brand, it fits the legacy, and I don't know why you would exactly let this one walk. I know, again, we're talking probably years down the line before this game is even released, and by that point, Xbox is probably not looking at exclusives as hard as they once were. Take a look at the recent moves that they've done here across these 4 games, from Grounded and Pentiment to Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush, going to other platforms, and a lot of Xbox fans have convinced themselves that that's the end of the road there, but I can pretty much promise you that there will be multiple Xbox games going multi-platform down the stretch, and so it is possible, if I were to offer, again, a fair point of view here, that Xbox may not have as much of a vested interest here due to changes in their business ongoing, because now they're shifting away from exclusives, like it or not. Not to just hunker down on this Xbox idea for too long, but I will just throw out there, with Game Pass being the primary platform moving forward, from what I've understood from Xbox, I feel like when they mention things such as Game Pass only existing on Xbox, that an equal value opportunity for them would be to bring KOTOR Remake into Game Pass if they feel it makes sense, and if Saber wants to do that deal too. It takes two to tango in that department, but perhaps that's another way that Saber could secure funding and Xbox could get that association. Just a little bit of spitballing from yours truly. Jason Schreier recently updated when asked if KOTOR is still alive. He said he can't promise it'll actually come out, but yes, it's still alive. So we still got something here. There's a pulse, right? And I will go on a little bit of a fanboy tangent here, so you'll have to pardon me here. Whenever I make these videos, I sit down and I connect with the game, right? I think that's a good way of getting me in the mindset, connecting with the product, if you will. And so when I was playing KOTOR, it's so funny that I noticed how every time I sit down to play these games, whether I just have bad memory or not, I always feel like I'm discovering something new. Now, this is KOTOR 2, not KOTOR 1 when I say this, but I was playing on Nar Shaddaa in KOTOR 2, and there was this moment where you have the Red Eclipse waiting on the Ebon Hawk. They're claiming it as their property, and there's a part there where you can make a choice that I had no idea about. You can choose to take complete control of them, I think because I was doing a dark side playthrough, and then you can choose to enslave a guy who was taking your ship as his own property at one point earlier in the story, and like all this stuff was optional and missable, and I couldn't believe it was just sitting right there. And I would love for modern audiences to have that same feeling with KOTOR, because even if this is my favorite game of all time, I have to admit that there are things I would love to see brushed up, see what they would do with character creation even. I was going through creating my character for KOTOR 1 and thinking, these are like all preset portraits and appearances. Like, what if they had just a really cool character creator? That would be an amazing step forward, and that's kind of like a general expectation of many games nowadays that are AAA. What about combat? How are you going to handle combat if I think Final Fantasy VII has provided you the perfect framework? I mean, KOTOR just naturally transitions into that 7 remake / rebirth gameplay system. I remember when Aspire was working on it, I had reported that it was supposed to be a combination of like Neo 2 with stances and more of that God of War action combat. I would personally be okay with that, because for me, KOTOR really came down more to build crafting than a lot of the abilities you were deploying in combat and it being more tactical over there. Maybe some of you will disagree, but I would be okay if they took a more action-y route with this game, believe it or not. You know how I roll. As long as the RPG elements remain in leveling up and the build crafting and the inventory system is there, and of course the light and dark side options are there, then that is the RPG segment of the game, and they can kind of do what they want with the gameplay, especially because KOTOR 2 does lean into stances. So yeah, there's so much to improve here. There's so much potential here for an already timeless story to be told. The other optimistic point of view and why I wanted to see the light of day is Saber handling this game is definitely nowadays better than Aspire, because if there was one thing that was concerning me with Aspire, it's that they had a lot of mobile game writers handling this, and there was reports of changes being made, and I had heard some different things that I reported on this channel, but it was starting to become a little bit of a ramping concern that we were just getting away from what this should be, which is, I respect how ballsy Square Enix was with their remakes of Final Fantasy VII, and that's a whole different vision. I don't know if you could do this multiverse-like sequel with KOTOR, and I think many of us are in the same pocket of just expecting a traditional remake, and I hope that's exactly what we get here. Even if they trim down the scope considerably, keep the gameplay the same, and just brush up the presentation, brush up the cutscenes, maybe even improve exploration, something that KOTOR I think does decently for its time period, but could be improved upon for sure to interact with the world more. These things could add so much to the game. So I apologize for taking that moment there to just have a fanboy rant, but it is so worth it, and I really do hope that it does see the light of day. Knowing it's in development is great. Knowing it's away from Embracer is the best news this game has gotten in years. I hate to say it, man, but it's true. It's the best news it got. Going privately owned is good news for us. Hopefully these investors see value in this project and don't immediately go, you've spent too much on this, let's can it. Because the other thing we've learned is, I'm going to look at Xbox, where when they got Activision Blizzard, and we saw shortly after layoffs that Odyssey was canceled, and Odyssey was in development for a very long period of time. KOTOR Remake has also been in a long development stretch, right? There was moments it was in stasis, transitioning developers. So you also have to be wary that potential new investors may look at this and go, what are we doing here? Let's invest our money and time over there, or this is closer to done, let's focus on this project and shelve that one. So it's not the light at the end of the tunnel necessarily, but it's definitely a good first step to getting this project into a healthy space. And I'm going to be very interested to learn who is going to help publish this game. But we'll see. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's my optimistic take on things. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below, so please do fire away with that take. Excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.